So today we're talking about transformational leadership for student success, and we will be offering that workshop throughout October. So the 16th, Scott will be in New York City offering the session, on the 17th in Syracuse, and on the 18th at SUNY Geneseo. We do have another session coming up before this, competing on culture, and there are still seats available for that. It's going to be presented by Randy Van Wagner, who's the president of Mohawk Valley Community College. So he's a very special guest presenter, and an opportunity to spend a day with him talking about his book that he's written on competing on culture. And it really focuses on higher ed and how you can use your culture in your institution to your advantage. So please, there are seats there. If you're interested in that topic and learning more and working with him, take advantage of that. All of these sessions, I should add, are most discounted for SUNY CPD members. Most campuses, I think there are only 10 that are not CPD members. So the rate is very low, $199 for our one-day workshops, and that includes lunch. And we also time them to be very convenient. So wherever you are, hopefully we're reaching you at a convenient location, and they're designed so that you won't have to spend an overnight and too much time in the car. The times of our workshops are 9:30 to 3 p.m. We also have Mary Ann Stark, who's going to be coming back to Syracuse on the 24th, talking about supervision and empowering supervisors for organizational performance in higher ed. We'll also have someone from SUNY System Administration who is an expert in unions, talking about the very complex unionized environment that we all are working in, especially at the community colleges. I know that there are several unions, and so that becomes very complicated. But we'll have expertise invited in to talk about that in that supervisory course. We'll have another guest speaker, Kirk Young, who's the Vice President for Enrollment Management at Jamestown Community College. He'll be out at SUNY Geneseo talking about leading your campus through change and conflict. So that's there are seats available in that session as well. There are seats in all of them. So there's plenty of time to plan your fall professional development. And then Scott will be doing another session on shifting mindsets for successful leadership in higher ed in the month of November. So he'll be making his tour around the state, New York City, Syracuse, and Geneseo in November. Special for our guests on this webinar, you can save 10% off of the cost of any of these workshops. And the code when you register through the site to enter is TY, thank you, webinar. TY webinar. So save 10% just by your interest in this webinar and listening today. We really hope that this translates into a preview for you, and we've piqued your interest and you want to learn more and practice with some of these ideas with others throughout the SUNY system. Okay, and one more bit of news before we get started with the program is that there is a first ever SUNY Student Success Summit happening at the University at Albany later this month. So on the 25th and 26th, there will be a program here, and you may have seen this announcement go out, but because of this topic of student success, we're all focused on the same thing here. There's going to be a 2-day program with 15 sessions with speakers talking about many different ways of achieving student success. And we do have Jennifer on the line here, and I've just unmuted you, Jennifer, if you'd like to add anything else about the event. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for allowing me to just give a brief update. So we're really excited about the event at the University of Albany. We thank you and Scott for giving us a few minutes to talk about it. We have a variety of proposals from campuses across the state that are focused on student success and putting students at the center. There'll be the format and the sessions will be up, I think, the end of this week, early next week for folks if they haven't registered yet. And the last thing I want to say is a lot of this work has come out of the SUNY Performance Improvement Fund process, which many of our campuses, both 2 and 4, have been a part of. So thank you very much for the ability to say a little bit about it, and we hope others can join us on the 25th and 26th.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. And I'll put the link for people to learn more and to register in the chat. So you'll have it there for you.
Thanks,
So,
Carolyn.
thank you. So without further ado, I am going to have Scott share his slides on transformational leadership. And if you haven't met Scott, Scott has been with the SAIL Institute for over a year now, and he's led some workshops on many different topics. And this is something that he's been researching for us this fall, and he has put this together for you all, keeping students at the center and how we can do that through our leadership skills. So thank you, Scott.
Well, thank you, Carolyn, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. I just want to check, Carolyn, to be able to advance these slides.
Sure.
It's not allowing me to advance them.
Okay, just click your arrow. There you go.
Great, thank you. So today's topic on transformational leadership, we're going to hit these bullet points throughout. And the one thing, if you've not been in one of these webinars before, is get your questions out and up and early so that we can begin to moderate them through the day. This will be as interactive of an experience as you make it to be, and we want to make sure that you get what you need out of it. Yes, this is a precursor to a full day workshop. I'm going to try in the next hour or so to convey as much of the details that I can with regard to transformational leadership and student success. But we really encourage your interaction. So Carolyn will be working hard to moderate that, and she knows to just kind of pipe in, say, hey, Scott, here's a question. Let's talk about this. So don't hesitate with the questions. So within these bullet points, I want to just jump right down to the fourth one, which really is the heart of it all. And your transformational leadership compass is going to be built upon a certain system of values and expectations that you have about how you would prefer to be treated, but it also explains and conveys to the world how you are going to treat them. And when we talk about this idea of being transformational in our leadership, you know, it's a developmental process. It truly is, because for many of us, we start out in a supervisory role or a managerial role, and we learn things, or we learn the importance of systems, for example, and we learn how micromanagement within systems is a good thing. We need it at times because the system is moving. That is, as we transition more into a leadership role, we're providing a vision, and we're providing a mission, and we're providing motivation for people to do their work. And you know, we're bringing groups of people together, diverse groups of people at times, for one common goal and one common mission. How do we then transition those experiences then into a transformational type of leader? And today what we're going to explore is some of the ways that folks do that. And when we think about transformational leadership from a global perspective, you know, who are the folks that are really doing some dynamic work all over the planet with regard to transforming individuals and how they perceive and how they think, and transforming organizations to not only just meet their expectations, but exceed their potential along the way. So again, thank you. And if you have those questions, keep them rolling in. So I love this cartoon by Tom Chaney, who coincidentally happens to be a SUNY alum, JCC graduate, Jefferson Community College, and also SUNY Potsdam alum. And the caption at the bottom reads, "So does anyone else feel as though their needs aren't being met?" And I don't know about you, but in some organizations, some experiences that I've had, it felt like I was a person falling off of the cliff. And the last thing that we would ever want to have our students experience is that anxiety and that anxiousness of feeling as though there's a support system that's not available when in one perhaps moment they thought that it was. So let's get your interactions right now. In what ways might students feel as though their needs aren't being met?
And feel free to use the chat feature. Can you see their feedback, Scott?
I cannot.
So pull up your chat menu and you can see falling, that's being thrown off the cliff. Can you repeat the question?
Yes. In what ways might students feel as though their needs aren't being met?
Okay, we've got some other feedback here in the Q&A, registration challenges, financial challenges, culturally. when professors aren't available for office hours or changes in office hours aren't posted.
Right.
How we communicate information to them. Email seems to be our main source of communication about everything that we offer, and it seems to be difficult for them to manage. Not enough tutors. At one institution, somebody's saying students feel that administration does not listen to them. Advisement or misadvisement. Getting help, financial aid, classes. Not sure how to navigate resources. Guidance,
Awesome.
mentoring.
Doing great. Yeah. So imagine okay, so let's just take that sample of data. Imagine what it might be like to be a student and go through your day with all of these minor challenges that turn into a major head popping off my shoulders type experience. And then how do they in turn feel about the institution that they attend? So many times we underestimate the power of communication. And so many times we underestimate the power of relationships. If you're interested in becoming a transformational leader, you have to start with one thing: reprioritizing what relationships mean. And that alone will give you a unique focus to make sure that each individual's needs are being met. Now, is it realistic to hit everybody, bullseye every time? Probably not. But if that's your aim, and if that's your mission, in what ways will you hit the bullseye with greater frequency as opposed to being all over the dartboard? So think what that student might be feeling as they go through their day and feel as though there's less support. My daughter is going to be is a senior in high school. She's doing the college thing, searching right now. And one of the things that as a parent I'm looking at is in what ways are there support systems in place for her so that as she makes her way to whatever institution we decide to send her to, that there are supports available when she needs them. And the other part to that is, how are you communicating truly what you do and when you do it? The comment about office hours. Do you just put them on your door? Do you put them on the syllabus? Are you in a social media space where you tweet out your office hours so that your students know when to reach you and how to reach you? So we underestimate that value of communication, and we underestimate relationships consistently. And that sends a very powerful message to students. So if we want to improve the student experience, we want to improve student success through a transformational leadership lens, then we might better think about how we're going to meet their needs consistently. So let's take a look at this data. And if you've ever been in a SAIL workshop before, certainly with Dr. Jason Lane, our executive director, you may have seen this graphic. So if we boil down this data, and this is from the Gates Foundation, to 100 students, this is what we would have. So each color represents a category, and that category equals 100. So I'd like you to just take a moment to review this data on each category, and then we'll start to do, just like you did a great job before, making some comments on this. Okay, so comment away. What is surprising to you about this data?
Oh, so Scott, we're making the assumption that everyone can read that very tiny font, and I know there are some on the program today that don't have full 20/20 vision. So maybe we should start by just sort of reading through some of these categories.
Right. So let's just simply start with the learning environment right up at the top, around 11 o'clock. This is surprising to me because I thought that the online learning space would be larger, that only 14% are online and that 72% are in seat in the classroom. 14% also have a blend of a learning environment, so it's sort of a hybrid. Looking at perhaps the 3 o'clock the type of school. Two-year institutions at 38%, and four-year institutions at 62%. How many of our students are employed? At the very bottom. 26% are full-time students, full-time employed. Part-time students, part-time employment, 36% of our college students. 38% don't even receive Pell Grants. Only 46% live on campus. So when we take a look at all this data, what then could it mean for us as leaders within this space to adapt our practices to meet the needs of the students?
Yeah, so Scott, the comment is coming through in the chat that we think about traditional students, and there are a lot of misconceptions about who the students actually are.
Right. Absolutely. So this gives us a little bit of a flavor as to, kind of what's out there in today's college students. And the expectations that students have going into college is very different than it was just even a decade ago. So we always know that we have to change with the times, but the challenge with that is higher ed seems to work at, a unique speed, let's just put it. So what sort of support structures are available for students? Let's go right from the beginning. We might have an orientation for them. We might create a time and a place for them to come on campus, get to know the people, get to know the atmosphere, get a flavor for where we're at. We might, jumping down to the first year seminar, we might take all of our first year students and then, give them a particular text to read so that it's a common experience. And then we would have, some type of culminating event at the end. We might encourage this idea of getting out and doing some bonding, creating some affinity through some excursions or some alumni engagements. We might encourage them to, take advantage of study abroad programs to have a global influence. So each one of these things, and this is just a small kind of smattering of opportunities and structures for students. But these are the types of things that will keep students with you. And we also need all of those things that you mentioned at the outset, which is, the day-to-day, the operational pieces, and making sure that our students understand that when they come to us with an issue, they're coming not because they just have the issue, but they haven't figured out quite yet how to resolve it on their own. And part of that teachable moment for us in the space of leadership is to not just help them solve problems, but give them the tools and the skill sets that they need so that they can solve the problems on their own. So then what makes it transformational? As I mentioned earlier, in everything that leaders do, relationships matter. When you think back of the most influential folks in your life, what made that bond so strong was the power of that relationship. What's unique about transformational leaders, they're not doing it for the sake of their ego. They're not doing it for money. They're doing it out of this idea of service. So from a perspective of leadership, in what ways can we offer our service to others? Because we know when somebody offers a hand and somebody is in need, they create a relationship. So transformational type of leaders are focused on strengthening bonds. They're focused on making sure that the environment that they're supporting and promoting is one of inclusion. They also see that might make them vulnerable. And therein lies a very difficult test for the leader. In what ways can you maintain the perception that you have of self, yet be vulnerable enough to show others who you really are? They are approachable. Transformational leaders are approachable and non-judgmental. They come to the table with an open mind, and they come with an understanding that everybody deserves an opportunity to be heard. And they're always looking to make connections. And they don't put limitations on the types of connections that they make. In other words, they're open to creating greater connections with faculty, doing the same way with, or the same things with administration, with students, with trustees or alumni. So there's not really a one size fits all, but there is a one size that everybody fits.
Scott, we have a hand up here, so I've unmuted Rebecca Small Kellogg. So Rebecca, you should be able to talk if you have a question. Hi, Rebecca. Hopefully you have a microphone hooked up to your computer. You are unmuted, so if you have a question, feel free to speak. And we also, Scott, sorry to interrupt your flow here, but we do have a couple of questions in the Q&A. So someone noticed in the data that there is a large gap between female and male students, and it's larger than they thought. And any guesses or explanation as to what causes this gap? And someone else made the comment in here that these are the only two categories listed, male and female. So I know this isn't 2018 data in the Gates grant, so we'll have to look back to see if there's been more effort to be inclusive and expand the categories a little bit.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed.
Okay. Another question, not to throw them all at you at once, but there is another question too about how to retrofit these concepts in the 100% online environment.
Yeah. Well, I think for the how to retrofit it in an online environment, my experience has been, what does the quality of the engagement look like or sound like or feel like, and what is the frequency with which they happen? Folks can get, especially in this digital age where, we can get to each other with a quick text or a tweet. How frequently are we having those interactions with each other? Because having been in an online environment, I'm familiar with that as both a student and as a faculty member, or administrator rather. I understand how folks can feel detached very quickly. So you just have to pay attention to the flow of that. And at least I had a challenge with that actually. So, and I seem to come to resolution with, I probably need to have a little bit greater frequency in maintaining contact. And I think it also happens through how you convey what you convey. How are you conveying your expectations, for example? How are you conveying what is acceptable? And what are the rules of engagement that we have in this online platform? And doing it with consistency is probably the biggest part of it all. Did we have another question from the woman that just left? Okay. Any other questions, Carol?
Nope, not at the moment.
Okay, great. We'll keep the questions rolling in. So, next slide. What does your transformational compass and disposition look like? When we talk about courage and leadership, that's the ability to step up, to not be silent. When we talk about our humility and our empathy, are we doing it with an agenda or are we doing it out of transparency? Again, transformational leadership isn't for everybody. It really isn't. And it's an evolutionary process, a developmental process, where folks just come to an understanding of what and how they value things, and people in particular. So if these are part of your compass rose, in what way are you showing others how they're going to be treated? And in what ways are you teaching others how you want to be treated? Probably the most powerful leaders that I've been grateful enough to be around had some of these things. They might not have had all of them, but they did other things so well, they didn't need them all. But you had the sense that they had the confidence to demonstrate grace when heated moments came up in meetings. You saw them exercise civility, not when it was easy to do, but when it was hard, when they may have even, their integrity may have been attacked. You saw the ways that they acted selflessly, not for themselves, again, or for their ego, but for the greater good of an organization. So when we do this one-day workshop, and I'll give you a little tip here, we'll have an opportunity to spend time with all 10 of these dispositions. And we'll begin to measure, engage the ways where we could, as leaders, demonstrate this with a little bit greater frequency and deliver it with a little bit greater clarity and consistency. Several years ago, in kind of working through this idea of transformational leadership, I did an exercise where each one of these words was on an index card. And every morning before I hit the bricks, so to speak, I shuffled them up and flipped one over and stuck it in my coat pocket. And not knowing what it would be for the day, and I looked at it and it may have said, empathy. Well, from that point forward, for the rest of that day, I wanted to make sure that when the moment came up to deliver empathy, that I was present for it. And if you don't put things on your radar, is what I learned. If you don't put things on your radar, you miss them all the time because you're not paying attention to them. So as you explore, and as we will explore in the one-day workshop, transformational leadership is dependent upon you taking deliberate action every single day to convey, again, what you expect to give to the world and then what you expect from it. It's a choice. Transformational leadership is a choice. And this is a powerful statement. How you make others feel around you says a lot about you. How you make others feel around you says a lot about you. Are you willing to offer your compass? Not when it's easy, but when it's hard. And if the last interaction you had with somebody was the very last one you ever had, what might they say about you? These are a little bit deeper questions or comments than just talking about your standard leadership practice. This is about doing something with someone and for someone in a deeper way. So when we think about our students and our employees, what makes them stick around? Well, they feel like you might help them grow. They feel like the courage that it took them to apply for the job and eventually get the job provided an opportunity for them to be the best they could be. They feel maybe an affinity towards someone or something. And we know that affinity within higher education can translate to substantial amounts of dollars. They also know that it's safe. Now, these are just some of the reasons that people stay, students and employees. And we know that we're inundated in New York and certainly in the Northeast with higher education choices. So when they leave, they traditionally leave because the bosses and you can fill whatever that blank in you want. But whatever it is, it's not working. It could be the culture. The culture might be toxic. They feel as though they're not having as much of an influence as they would like, so they take their skill set elsewhere. And it could be threatening on many levels. It's difficult to explore transformational leadership when those 4 bullet points on the right are present. Transformational leaders also understand purpose. They understand their idealized influence is purpose-driven. Their motivation and inspiration to deliver consistently. makes a difference to how other people not just behave, but perform. The individualized consideration they offer, because they're people driven and there's genuine concerns for others, and that there's some level of intellectual stimulation. It challenges followers to be creative and innovative. And in essence, this is what SAIL does. But it requires work. It requires transformational leaders work to be strategic, that they work to make the most of their academic initiatives, that they're innovative, and that they provide consistent leadership. Carolyn, we have any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, ideas? Yes. Get those hands up, folks.
Nothing has come through in the chat, Scott, but thank you. So everything that you type in the chat, we're keeping track of here, or you can use the Q&A. If you'd like to use your microphone, feel free to raise your hand. So Scott, can I push back a little bit on some of these topics?
Absolutely.
So some people might look at some of these qualities of leaders and think this is the soft stuff. What would you say?
Well, it's only as valuable as you give it credit to be. In other words, if I value empathy, I'm going to exercise it. If I value truly being civil, again, not when it's easy, but when it's hard, I'm going to exercise it. The challenge that most of us face in moments of duress, or certainly under stress, and you know, difficult, Carolyn, for me to have a conversation about leadership without talking the brain, right? Mm-hmm. So when your amygdala, the center of your emotional center of the brain, amygdala, thalamus, hypothalamus, when that gets hijacked and you start to really lose your rational thought process and thinking, which is housed in the prefrontal cortex, it's a big tug of war going on. When that gets hijacked, it shuts down your critical thinking and problem solving capabilities and capacity. So we have to, in those moments, begin to take a step back. And when someone says or does something that really doesn't fit, that you seek understanding before actually responding. And many folks in the space of leadership will react instead of seek out the understanding. That's, in my experience, that's how you go about building sustainable relationships, when you seek understanding. But it takes time and it's work. It's not, I'm not saying this stuff is easy, folks. But yeah.
Good. Scott, there's a question here about any suggestions on how to achieve a balance between academic expectations and grace for students?
Right. Well, the students come with a set of expectations, and faculty come with a set of expectations. So if you could imagine what it could be like to be in the shoes of the student, then what becomes a reasonable set of expectations for them, how they see the world. Can you repeat the question though one more time, Carolyn?
Sure. We're looking for some suggestions, and feel free, participants here, if you want to put some suggestions for this person into the chat. She's looking for ways on how to achieve balance between academic expectations and grace for students.
Well, how I'm hearing the question is, when students don't meet the expectations, academic expectations, they might come to you and say, hey, you know, first of all, and this has happened, you know, as an educator, this has happened to me, can I do extra credit? Well, no, you didn't do what was basically the basic stuff here. So you're not going to get extra. And then they might pitch a little bit of a fit about it. Well, if you wait till the end to do that, and this is why it's really important to stay on top of grades of the students as they're moving through, because they might not be. So, having a very quick conversation with them, reminding them what the expectations are, doing it so that they understand you are a part of the support network. You're not an adversary to them. You're kind of challenging them to take a little bit better look at their time management, perhaps, especially with first-year students. I've just found that over the years, the time management skill set is diminished. So they have a difficult time, balancing their work because they don't understand how to balance their time.
Exactly, and that's exactly what the question was really trying to get at, things like deadlines. So
Yeah.
How to balance the deadlines and also have grace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and demonstrating those moments of grace with them is through those conversations. Kind of tell me what's happening in your life that's preventing you from exceeding your potential. You can have that. That's a question that I enjoy having with students. What's in the way from you? What's getting in the way of you from not being the best you can absolutely be? And they may reveal things to you in those moments that could be pretty stark, that you might not have been on your radar. But at the end of the day, the student is accountable. This doesn't supplant accountability by any stretch. So the ability to have those difficult or crucial conversations when they arise is important. Not having them, though, you're just as complicit to the problem. So the leader has to take the responsibility of leading and have the difficult conversation when it's called for, and doing it with grace and with dignity and civility. Anything else, Carol?
No, not at the moment.
Okie doke. So, because this is what SAIL does, and part of the work that we'll be doing this month into transformational leadership in New York City, in Syracuse, and in SUNY Geneseo, I'd take full advantage, if I were you, and go ahead and sign up today. These programs have a strong likelihood of filling up quickly. And as Carolyn mentioned, from 9:30 to 3, that way you can travel if you have a little bit of a distance to do so, and arrive fresh and ready to go.
Great. And there was a question about whether this webinar will be recorded and available on demand after we're done here today. And yes, it will be. So feel free if someone has a project that they need to get to with time sensitivity. So feel free to share this webinar even with your colleagues, and hopefully this will pique their interest. And we will see you in the sessions later this month.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day and look forward to meeting you.
Oh, and there's one more comment here, Scott.
Yeah.
So sorry, she wasn't done typing. She said she knows faculty members who maintain their authority and don't bend or won't bend because of how it would be perceived. Oh, sorry, my phone is going here. Anyway, they think that they are giving up authority in the classroom. How do we approach them as colleagues to rethink that?
Great question. How much time do we have? This is a really important question, because it really centers on values, in my opinion. What is it that they think that they're achieving through their behavior, and what's the reality? Where could they improve relationships for the sake of keeping students at their institution and sacrificing a little bit of their ego in order to do so? Getting folks to pivot off of that is very difficult. But as we have been preaching, within the SAIL Institute, it's important for leaders to be nimble, to understand things from multiple perspectives and seek that understanding. I had a conversation just Monday with a very good friend who has taken over a coaching job at an institution. And, you know, he's sort of from the mindset of coaching student athletes, you know, my way or the highway. And he has run into more problems in the first month than he could ever have imagined. So we had a conversation about that. And, you know, getting him to see the other side of the coin, getting him to pivot off of that. You know, I asked the question, what's the best thing that could happen? And the response is they conform. Okay. What's the worst that could happen? They leave. Okay. Well, if you're in charge of both, which one is going to get greater priority? Because you can't coach without a team. You can't teach without students.
Good. And so just as a reminder, I put in the chat the link to view all of the SUNY Sale one-day workshops that are scheduled for this fall. You'll see them back up on the screen here. And we really hope that we've sort of piqued your curiosity a little bit, and we'll have more interaction and some hands-on activities planned, and some private conversations about how we can make these values translate into your work as a leader on your campus and really advance your own career and what you're doing for your students. So please take advantage of that code. Thank you again for your interest in today's webinar. Save 10% on any of these one-day workshops. Just use the code TYWebinar when you go online to register. And if you have any questions or you want to reach out to the Sale Institute, if you are interested in any of these topics and really bringing them to your campus, that is something else that we do. And we're happy to work with you and reach your audience without any need to travel at all. So reach out to us. leadership@suny.edu is our main email box. My name's Carolyn Matisky. I'm the assistant director here in Albany, and hopefully you'll get a chance to meet Scott Vinciguerra in person at one of his upcoming workshops this fall. And one other thing, we have our nomination period open for all of our signature programs. So we didn't talk about this, but these are our one-day offerings, but we're really known for our week-long experiences or our 2.5-day winter leadership retreat. So the nomination period is open for all of those. If you are an alumni, I see a few of our alumni on the webinar today, which is fantastic. Please do something to support your colleagues and really give them this opportunity to focus on their leadership growth. So we have our winter leadership retreat coming up July 9 through 11, and that is right outside of Albany. It's about 45 minutes southwest of Albany in Rensselaerville, a very beautiful rural setting. And we'll be talking about sustainability and leadership. So you can self-nominate if you are interested in attending, or you can nominate a colleague at your campus. So that period of registration is open through the end of November. So think about who you'd like to support in that endeavor. We always offer an executive leadership program. That's for people really seeking the highest levels of leadership in higher ed. So vice president and presidential roles. And we'll be offering that June 17th through 20th in New York City at the SUNY Global Center. And the nominations are open for that as well. And then our summer leadership program, which is probably the most popular, we'll be offering that. It's always the last week in July, beginning of August. So July 29 through August 2 this year. And it always fills up. So if you are interested in either attending that or nominating someone, please get those in and really think about the strength of your nominations. If you can have a recommendation from someone in senior leadership on your campus, that will speak volumes. And we really are trying to increase diversity of people in all of these programs. So think about who you can support and who you'd like to give an opportunity to. So all of those are on our website, on our nominations page, and you'll see lots of information about workshops and topics and custom offerings, executive coaching, and SUNY 360s, and all of your leadership needs. So not to be too overly salesy, but we are here to support you. We are here to support you in all of the really important work that Scott gave you a preview of today, and there's just a lot that you have to self-reflect and think about, and it takes time, and to hopefully you will have you can make that time for yourself this fall or in the winter. So think about your schedule, and hopefully we will get the opportunity to meet you and work with you one-on-one. Anything else, Scott, to wrap up for the day?
Just thanks again for your time, folks. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Scott.
Absolutely. Have a great day, folks.
Okay, and this webinar will be available on our website in the next couple of days. So if you just go to sunysail.org and you look for our webinars page, anything that's already aired will be available on demand. We do have a few more webinars that are coming up for free, so feel free to register for any that interest you and share those with your colleagues. Thank you.